Hey everyone, Broheen here from the Gamer Emporium channel. This will be the first installment of the Warrior videos. So for level 60 Warrior, we're going to start off with Tempest because it is one of the new souls, and a lot of people have some issues finding a good rotation for this. Now this rotation is very, very stressful. Everything's got to be in a certain order. Everything is timed to hit at specific times, and if you lose your spot, it's not too hard to pick back up off of, but you do definitely, if you mess up, you will fall heavily out of rotation and kind of be at a DPS loss from that point on until you get back on track to where you were. So 61 Tempest, fill it up, 15 Rift Blade, 5 in Elemental Precision, 3 in Elemental Empowerment, 2 in Burning Blood, 5 in Affinity. Paragon is your other, your off soul, because you get Way of the River, which increases your physical crit. You don't really use Swift Strike unless, you really don't use Swift Strike in this. So you can move around quite a lot in this spec. However, you can't when you're using your Charged Pulse macro, because there is a cast time, and there's also your channeled abilities you can move around with as well. So I'm going to open up the macros, and then we'll go through the abilities, and I will explain the rotation after that. Excuse me. So let me find my Tempest stuff. Haven't looked at this in a long time. Now this spec is actually guild members of mine. His name is Baltair, or we're on Deepwood. If you have questions, try talking to me first about it, but worst case scenario, I mean, he might be able to answer something for you. So, if he's online. So, basically, the first macro you see on the first button right here is your Delayed Pulse macro, which is Delayed Pulse and Lightning Torrent. Now it casts Delayed Pulse, and then it casts Lightning Torrent, and you just let Lightning Torrent channel out. The second thing you're going to do after that is use your arc, which is macroed in. Now this you can do either or, macro 'em or don't macro 'em, but make sure you hit arc first for your first 3 attack points, and then Skyfall for the second set of them, and switch back and forth between it. And I'll explain that in a moment, but I have them macroed together just for ease of access, I guess. It makes it it's easier for me, and I can control it well. So after that, you go into your Charged Pulse macro. So let me find that guy. It is show Charged Pulse, suppress macrofailures, cast Focus Fire, cast Charged Pulse, cast Double Pulse. Double Pulse can only be cast right after a Charged Pulse, so that's why those two, it's a no-brainer, macro them together. Focus Fire is in there for when you do your wavelength block, which I'll explain in a moment again. After you hit your, those first 3 buttons, run those 3 macros out, then you're left with 1 attack point. So then you fill it with a Flamespear, which I have a macro. It's not really a spam, but boy, that's not the right spam. It's a dots. Flamespear, and then Electricity Blast for that macro. So you do those 2, now you're up to 3, and then you cast Electricity Cascade, which is a very hard-hitting dot. Once Electricity Cascade takes out all your attack points, you move on to your Dual Pulse, where there's a little macro there that I call Dual Shock because it's a mix between Dual Pulse and Shock Pulse. So this is the macro for that. Cast Dual Pulse, cast Shock Pulse. After that, those 2 are cast. Dual Pulse awards 2 attack points. Shock Pulse awards 1, so you're back up to 3, and you should have Arc still on cooldown for a few more seconds where you can hit Skyfall instead. So basically your finishers are going to go Arc, then Electricity Cascade, then Skyfall. By that point in time, your Dual Pulse or Delayed Pulse is still on cooldown. You'd start with a Lightning Torrent again, and when that runs out, you hit your Arc and continue the rotation. So now having Dual Pulse in there, or Delayed Pulse, sorry, I keep calling it Dual Pulse. Delayed Pulse in there is that when you dot the enemy with it, after 5 seconds, it'll cause 11,000 air damage. Now with arc being used, arc is going to increase the amount of damage that attack does. Now as long as you get arc up before delayed pulse actually ticks on the enemy, it'll do that 90% increased damage. So basically what you get out of that is you fill the time with the Lightning Torrent after the delayed pulse, and then you are using your charged pulse and double pulse abilities. By the time those two abilities hit, your delayed pulse will tick, and it's just a crazy amount of damage. Like, that's the bursty part of this spec. So that's really it for the rotation. It's very rotation heavy, and I'll show it to you as best as I can. I haven't played it in a while, but I just tried it once a second ago, and I was still doing, 12, 13k DPS on the raid boss dummy. So wavelength block. You have an ability called wavelength. Wavelength resets the cooldown on all the abilities for 15 seconds, and you can cast charge pulse, dual pulse off cooldown, and your charge pulse can be cast instantly. Now this is where you're going to starve yourself of energy. But if you're lucky and you have a good internet connection, you can get 5 to 6 charge pulse, double pulse combos out, and pretty much obliterate whatever's in your path, and focused fire is going to go up at that point in time too. So you want to start your rotation using your wavelength block. So basically what it consists of is hitting them with a delayed pulse, a lightning torrent, then arc, then you hit wavelength, and you sit there for 15 seconds just casting charged pulse. And you can get 5 to 6 of them out, and they're all doing extra 90% damage each tick, and it's just doing lots of damage. Then after the wavelength block goes down, you start hard casting your charge pulse again. Then you start the rotation over again with a delayed pulse and lightning torrent, and go through the rotation I just previously explained. So let's demount here. Oh yeah, I almost forgot about buffs. Your buffs that you're going to use are enhanced conductivity, empower, electromagnetic shield, avatar of wind, storm blade, and way of the river. So we're going to make sure those are all applied. And we're going to go. So we're going to start off with delayed pulse, lightning torrent. We're going to hit that arc right away when it's done, go into the wavelength block. Now here at 3 points you want to hit arc again to increase the damage yet even more from the rest. But here you're going to see you're going to have extra attack points that aren't being used. Now you Skyfall, go through the rotation like normal, hit your arc, charged pulse, double pulse, dot them up, electricity cascade, dual pulse and shock pulse, and you still have time left for a Skyfall. Now this time around you don't have the delayed pulse, you just lightning torrent, arc, and go back through the charged pulse and double pulse, dot them, electricity cascade again, dual pulse, and a shock pulse. You still have time for a Skyfall. Now by the time you do your delayed pulse the second time and your lightning torrent again, hit your arc, now you're back into your wavelength block. So if you look at the cast timers, replay the video at that point and look at the cast timers, it's within 2 to 3 seconds of each other that wavelength block comes off of cooldown, which is just insane. Like, this spec that he made is just timed to the T, and it's a crazy amount of damage. Now there is a little bit of AoE in this spec, which comes from electricity blast, but take a look over at the meter. We are doing maintaining 13k DPS after about 2 minutes. So get used to it. Everybody needs a range spec, and this is it for warriors. I have faith in everybody. and I think you guys are way more than capable of taking it on and learning it. You just got to put the time into it. It's definitely not one of those rotations that you're gonna sit and be able to do after sitting here at the dummy for 20 to 30 seconds. You're actually gonna have to spend a little bit of time on this and put a little bit of effort into learning it. And that's all I can really say about it. So, but practice it and have fun. It's gonna be easy, easy high DPS in dungeons rather than being up in melee, and it's good stuff. So thanks again, Baltair, for letting me use the spec and putting it up on the channel, and hopefully we got her done for Tempest for a while here, because I hope the spec doesn't change now that I'm so used to it. So thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks again, Baltair, and thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions or comments or concerns or whatever it may be, please leave a comment. We love hearing from you guys. On that note, have an awesome day and good luck with the spec. Thank you.